Last week, Sunday, I was standing outside the church in Lincoln as people were leaving the church, as they were exiting. And one of the things I realized and noticed for the first time in over 3 years was the name on the tombstone that you first see as you exit the church. Frazee Lorge. Frazee died in 1872, probably one of the first people buried in that cemetery in Lincoln. The gravestone says Frazee died at the age of 24. As I saw that gravestone, I asked myself a few different questions. First of all, how many people notice this gravestone as they exit the church? How often do people walk by Frazee's gravestone and read her name and think about Frazee? The second, I wondered, does Frazee have any living relatives? She died in 1872. Who would be her descendants? Do they ever think of Frazee? Do they know any stories about her? Do they pray for her? Have masses been said for Frazee? Those were a few of the questions that came to mind. Also, seeing that she died at the age of 24, I wondered, well, what did she die of? Did she die in childbirth? Did she die from some disease that they didn't know how to treat at the time? How did Frazee die? Sort of questions that I had looking at Frazee's gravestone in the cemetery. And today in our second reading, we heard a little bit about the grave. St. Paul says that the archangels will come and they will blow their trumpet at the last day, and all the dead will rise from their graves. It's what we believe. It's what we profess in the second coming of Jesus in that final judgment of earth before heaven. The archangels will come, and that's why at our grotto we see 2 angels with trumpets there. They are symbolic of those angels that will announce the day of the Lord when it comes. We heard tonight in our gospel the story of this young man, this widow of Nain. She's a widow. She's already lost her husband, and now her son dies. She's going through that grieving process. And as she's going through it, Jesus just happens to be in this city that day. He sees that mother and decides, I'm going to go and touch that coffin. And he says to the man, young man, I tell you, arise. And he gets up. He begins to talk. So now imagine the next time this man dies. They go through this process again. They take him to the cemetery. They bury him there. And what did people like me, when you go and you see a grave like Frazee, what do they see when they see this gravestone of this young man, unnamed in our gospel? Does it say the young man given new life by Jesus? The young man given a second chance at life by the wonder worker? What would be inscribed on this young man of Nain on his gravestone? You see, the stories that we have of those who have gone before us, of all of those names that you are here tonight because they were your loved ones, they were your family members. Each of them has a story, and you know that story quite well. I was listening to a podcast earlier last week, and the individual said that when you pass on from this world, the stories you don't tell also go with you. It's kind of saying that those who are here now should share those stories about our loved ones. That parents and grandparents will share the stories of these individuals with grandchildren and great-grandchildren, so that 130 years from now, those descendants will say, Well, that was Frazzy, and this is the story about Frazzy's life, and my family hasn't forgotten Frazzy. That you might be able to say that about all of your loved ones, that the descendants will be able to find a post I make on Facebook and be able to share that Frazzy was born in the province of Namur in Belgium, that she is related down through the generations, and these are the living descendants today, that she would have been their great-great aunt. You see, when we tell the stories of our loved ones, well then, they're never forgotten, that they continue to live on in our mind, in our hearts, and in the stories that we tell. Tonight we gather to remember, and an act of that remembrance is to remember them by name, and also we gather tonight to remember them so that we do so in prayer, praying to Almighty God for them, that He will allow them to be granted that vision of heavenly glory if they do not yet experience that. Today is a day of remembering those who have gone before us, and with all of you as our parish community, we are blessed to be able to remember them with you tonight. To remember their great contributions that they made to this parish community, and to remember them now as we commend them to the love and mercy of Almighty God.